much for a hand.
There's no dignity in disability, is there? So welcome. I hope the chairs are as comfy as, well, they don't look it, so enjoy. We will wrap up, I've been told, at 12, so that you've got time to go back across for the next thing that starts at 5 past. Bearing in mind our client base, we'll try and wrap up at 5 to. So you've got time to walk back and get your breath and be there in time for the next thing. So we're all going to keep an eye on our own watches, devices and clocks, so we can be responsible together for wrapping up at about 5 to 12. If you want to stay here and talk beyond that, that's your business. I'll be packing up my projector and laptop for the next person coming into the building after me. So my name is Katie, and everything you see on the screen I can email to you if you want it to look at your own leisure when you get back to your places of worship. My aim is that all the things on the screen I will talk through, but I might refer to rather than do in detail. So I'm not going to tell you everything on the screen unless you have a visual impairment and you're saying what screen. Which would be kind of awkward and slightly embarrassing for me doing disability and inclusion if you're going, I can't see the screen. So if you want these slides emailing to you, there's more on the screen than I will be doing here, because this is originally a 2.5-hour lecture to ordinands that I was given 20 minutes for with feedback and questions. So wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. We are looking at, and this is a kind of a title that's quite loose and fluid, but it'll have to do, the church and disabled people, how do we flourish? You'll notice the interesting thing about the word disabled, there's a small d and a capital D, because disability small d generally, as far as language now goes, but everything changes within a generation, is about disability with a small d, medical conditions that we live with, which hamper our ability to flourish and function in a mainstream way. Capital D is the social model, if you are into this language, which is more about, I have a medical condition which is okay and I can manage and live with it, it's not a problem, but when I leave my front door, then I become disabled. So capital D is the politics and smaller d is more the medical. So if you're used to that language, then you'll be going, yay, she's covered both my bases. And if you're not used to that language, you've just learned something new. I talk too fast and too much, so if I'm going too fast, just leave in a fit of pique. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. I love a heckler on the back row. I'll be keeping an eye on you. But if you have any sort of visual impairments and can't see the slides, or you have any hearing impairments and I am genuinely talking too quickly, just wave at me and I'll do my best to slow down. I am not an expert on disability and inclusion, I am an advisor. In my own field I'm an expert, but that does not mean I know everything about everything. We're going to be looking at 3 particular areas, hopefully if we get through it all. The first, studying the soil. So looking at the history and heritage of disability in church politics and in wider society, knowing where we've come from in order to explain how we're here. I don't mean here generically in this room, but I'm saying, well, how does the church use language and why? Where's it come from? So looking at the soil. The second bit is, what did Jesus do about people with disabilities or disabled people? And I'm going to interchange those 2 phrases because, again, language is a bit tricky. And it was people first language. We are people with disabilities. And then kind of everyone went, no, I'm disabled. Get a grip. You don't say people with hair. You don't say the woman who is white, you say white woman or black man. So it's actually about kind of identity first. My identity is hugely about disability. So I tend to say disabled people rather than people with disabilities, and it's quicker. So, you know. So what did Jesus do? And then finally, what about disabled leaders? Because an awful lot of our model of church life is able-bodied, white, old men. Certainly in clergy terms, if not amongst the laity. And we love them. We do. They are fabulous. They are the backbone of dog collars throughout history. They're all retiring this year, so we're going to run out of leaders. But we talk about disability and inclusion as though it's us, the able-bodied, welcoming in those lovely disabled people. But what if your next vicar or pastor has a disability? What will you do then? How does your theology in your building match up to say to them, brilliant? And if you're thinking, what's she on about? I have cerebral palsy. That might be my next slide. This is me. So a variety of embarrassing pictures. So I was born with cerebral palsy, which means neurologically my brain's fine, my legs are fine, my limbs are fine, but there's a few brain cells that just don't want to play ball and they don't pass on the messages they should do. So learning to do things is by watching what your body does and going, really? Why did I just do that at the age of 2 or 3? So it's about retraining yourself to behave in a normal way because your brain cells are just scrambling at every message gets sent through about coordination, balance and communication. Go and Google cerebral palsy. You'll scare the life out of yourself. It's great. So I am primarily a daughter. That's what I was first when I was born. I was someone's daughter. My mother's mantra was there's no such word as can't, to which I now, I'm being recorded, to which I now say rubbish. Because there are limitations actually, and I can't tightrope walk, for example, so there is an exception to mum's rule. But without her belligerence I wouldn't now be here. But now you have to learn the new mantra, which is sometimes there is a word can't, but I'm going to find out where it is. I became a sister when my little sister was born. She's a pain in the backside, but I love her to bits. And without her, I wouldn't have survived school. She was my bodyguard when some of the kids were cruel, and she soon told them not to be. She's 5 years younger than me, but boy, is she feisty. If you ever meet her, just run a mile. No, she's fab. I became a wife and I married my husband. I just assumed that everyone just, grew up, did all the normal stuff and got married, so I married Chris. He hasn't quite recovered. 21 years later, we're still married. I'm not quite sure how. It's great. And then I became a mother rather after a long wait. The lovely Samuel was born, and it means God hears me, Samuel, which is an appropriate name. He's it. Just the one. Yeah, let's miss out the word just. He is the one. He is my son, whom I am well pleased. I became a vicar somewhere in the process, which is a surprise to everybody apart from God. Still a surprise to me. So I've been ordained 14 and a bit years this year, so it's a bit of a blur. And hopefully I'm a friend, but I'm not quite sure I'm that good at being a friend. And I have a disability. Yay, cerebral palsy. Bigging up if I use the word crip, don't get upset by it. It's not a nice word, but it's quicker than disability. And within this disabled world, quite often we reclaim these words just to be a bit funny and to get the power back into our hands. So crip bay, disabled parking bay. Crip badge, blue person's disabled parking badge. So it's but I won't use the word crip too often because it's not a nice word, but I just cheat. And if my clicker would join in, I'm also the founding member of Disability and Jesus. If you're on Twitter, you'll know we've got about 10,000 followers. We are a user-led task group, mainly online, because we can't afford to do anything else. We're self-funded. We're like the trinity of disability. So Big Bill, Father Bill is the father, and he's big and solid, and he's had a mental breakdown, he survived it, and he's on the edge currently. I'm a bit worried about him, but he's like the father. He's big and cuddly and reliable and absolutely strong. Then you get Dave, he's more like Jesus, Messiah complex, and quite feisty. If you're online on Twitter and he posts things up that are quite annoying, then that's definitely Dave. He's blind, he's got Jarvis the guide dog, who basically is our mascot. Jarvis runs Twitter because Dave is a bit belligerent. So Dave is like Jesus, a bit on the edge and upsets people, but he's got a good heart. Apparently I'm the Holy Spirit. I waft around a lot, no one's quite sure what I do, but things happen when I turn up. So Disability and Jesus, we are there to be used by you to come and train people, think about theology, and ask the question, where is Jesus in my disability? So, studying the soil, you're going to get a quick yomp through politics from 1388 to the present day. So, strap yourselves in, hang on to whatever's solid around you, a friend, or if that's inappropriate, the chair. We are going to race our way through the politics of disability because that frames what church thinks about disability in big ways, but also some of the big church fathers, starting with people like Gregory of Nicaea and working our way through there too, because politics and theology have formed the church we are today, whether we realise it or not. So 1388, the Statute of Cambridge, the Poor Law, it first of all talked about the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. And we have had the language of the deserving poor in statute until, well, what year did it change? I guess I'll go for a guess. Or what century did it change? When did the law change the deserving poor language in something else, and what was it? This is a quiz. So, when did we change? 20th century, yep. 1948. With the introduction of the health service and the welfare state. So we talked about people like me. I keep saying we like I'm able-bodied. I operate in two different places. Well, I'm part of us and them. I'm a little bit of both. It's slightly weird and bit uncertain. So we as a society talk about the deserving poor. What a lovely phrase, you are the deserving poor, until you became part of the welfare state in 1948. And that language has been all the way through everything. When it comes to categorising in law, who's in, who's out, oh, you're the deserving poor. And disability came into that more so in the 1600s in the Elizabethan Poor Law that included children and widows. But that's been our language ever since. Bedlam, of course, was the deserving poor. We don't look after them, but we do put them in institutions and lock them up and keep them safe so that we, who are the mainstream, can be safe from these unfortunate people. Through the kind of 1700s, there was different attitudes to mental health. It was lock it up. If you were a vagrant, then you were locked up. But the deaf people started to realise that this wasn't enough, and they were the first to pioneer their own deaf school for deaf children in 1746. If it says on there, you've got a bigger screen than I have. The Industrial Revolution brought huge problems, as well as making the country better, because they had people now who were being injured by factory work. And if you were late, they would make you walk the length of the factory with weights on your back as a punishment to you, but as a thing to other people to say, don't be late because you'll be punished. Because those people then became disabled because they had the weights on their back from walking up and down the corridor, and they became more disabled, and then they couldn't work. So they were bringing people into the factories, making them disabled, sending them into the poor law and all this kind of business, and then running out of people in the factories who were able-bodied to keep running the factories. So the Industrial Revolution was both a blessing and a complete curse, and it brought more disability into society than had been there previously. People were injured seriously, and the death rate just shot through the roof. Through the 1800s, everyone kind of got on the deaf children's school bandwagon. So everybody else was going, that's a really good idea. So although people were owning their own disability and owning the politics of it, it was still about segregation. We will have a deaf school or a blind school over here. So it's still about, you are the deserving poor who need your own space, which means we can mainstream get on with it. I use the word mainstream rather than normal, because all it takes is for polio to come back across the whole of one generation, and what becomes normal is polio and bodies like mine, and what becomes not normal is people who walk currently on two legs and enjoy the normal life. So mainstream, as in the majority of people's health. I think in the next 10 years, mainstream for a certain category of age will become dementia and Alzheimer's. And I think when we hit when I hit retirement, I'll be looking at my mainstream peer group and just thinking, when will it be my turn to be hit with dementia and Alzheimer's? That's going to become normal because we are living into those time frames, whereas before we did not. We were dying of natural causes before we hit the dementia Alzheimer time frame, and we're living longer, which is good, but into those places that we wouldn't have known beforehand. So as a community, as a society, we've got to get ahead of that. And I'm learning a lot about dementia and Alzheimer now. It's not a disability necessarily, it's a long-term chronic condition, but it kind of comes under my inclusion thing. So, as is many things, yeah.
And because of the disproportionate presence of older people in our congregations, it's going to hit the church sooner than the mainstream society.
It really is. It'll hit church sooner because we've got more of that category of the age. So if our churches are not, just go and Google, Google's a bit dangerous, but go and find out about dementia and Alzheimer's now, so that you can spot it in your fellow people at church and just go to your vicar, your pastor, or whoever it is, and just go, I think, what are we doing about this? What are we putting in place environmentally that will make it easier for them to stay in our church for longer without going up and going, oh, have you got dementia? What can I do to help? Because dignity is a huge thing, and disability doesn't allow for it. The wars, oh my goodness. So the first war, the Great War, saw a depleting of the nation and women having to do all the work. Well, we still are. And just, you know, people who survived the war in the trenches coming back with bits of them missing. And suddenly you've got this society that says, the deserving poor are over there. Oh no, that's my son come home with half a leg. I'm not going to have him institutionalised because he's one of us. He's not one of them, but disability is now in my house. And it became a household issue rather than just an easy segregation. Other people can have their people put into institutions and what have you. And then between the wars, of course, Nazi Germany.
After the First World War, they got no social support.
There was no social support. It was all just down to homes and families going, how do we do this? And everyone just thought it was a one-off. So we don't need to future-proof this kind of reality, because we've done the Great War. And of course, as we know, it wasn't the Great War, it became World War One, because the Nazi Germany, with their programme of social cleansing and ethnic cleansing, they forcibly sterilised 300,000 disabled Germans. This is their own people, the undeserving poor, as they might have called them. And then in World War II, of course, we know that the ethnic cleansing was widespread: disability, Jewish, gypsies, and what have you. So we know enough about that. Interestingly enough, that worldview is based on Martin Luther's theology of the body and identity. So everyone who goes, Martin Luther, Reformation, woo!
Which they're celebrating.
Oh yes. Well, some people are. So Reformation, yeah, Martin Luther, jury's out on him. So I'll come back to him in a minute. And then from the Great Wars onwards, people started to think more about this. We can't just say to people, cope with your war wounded in your homes. There must be a wider programme. And like I said, the language changed to become the welfare state. So when you think about the fact that I was born in 1974, I know I don't look that old, you're very kind. My grandparents' language of someone like me was the deserving poor. And my parents' language was the welfare state. And I turn up going, well, actually, I'm just Katie with a disability. How do we do this? But they've got the baggage of politics and society from 1388 right up to me being born. My grandparents looking at me going, oh, she is one of those people in our family. And it wasn't due to war or violence, it was due to accident of birth. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, did you find that it was in that period of time that people were hidden away by their families because they were disabled or deformed?
Absolutely, and the rise of special schools was huge, because it was done nominally as a way of kind of saying, well, they need their own space and their own thing. But actually, a lot of us are quite normal. And the bit of me that doesn't work very well is my left leg. That doesn't do the algebra and learn the languages and do the reading, writing and arithmetic, which doesn't work. The rest of me does, and the rest of me is quite capable of being in a mainstream school. And my parents kind of, when they got over the shock of, oh, she's got a disability, what do we do? Take her home and love her. No, what do we do? Nothing. The advice was nothing at all. Was to go, well, we'll just stick her in all the normal stuff and we'll just see how she flourishes. And they were belligerent enough to make it work, which is good. But you're right, a lot of I lived in Wales from the age of 4 to the age of 10, and actually the Welsh experience was brilliant, because they were about mainstream first, and if it doesn't work, then we'll transfer you into a special school. We moved to England when I was 10, we should have moved when I was 7 with my dad's job. The English authority said, paperwork, disability, special school. With no question of meeting me, talking about it, or meeting my teachers. It was a straightforward category, boom, and off you went. Which is a massive thing in the church, because a lot of my disabled activist friends on Twitter who do not do church, and I've asked them why, they've said because church categorises me as, I need help, I am special, I need patronising, not I have intrinsic value in my own right. So I will never be a mainstream church goer, because the church, their perception is, oh, you need healing, your faith is all wrong. Rejected, yeah.
Sadly, as we drove up to the car park, wound the windows down today, the question was asked, are you disabled or special?
Disabled or special? I think you'll find I'm both. Disabled or special?
What if I'm both?
Interesting,
Are you
yeah.
disabled, sorry, you're disabled or important?
Disabled or important? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's definitely worse.
And it was contended, such as a categorical error, that it's not possible to be both.
That's
yeah. Welcome here.
Yeah, so as the Bishop's advisor on disability and inclusion, I will make it my aim to train teams before events, which should be part of my brief. Not everyone reads my brief. Looking at the camera at that point. So where have I got to? Oh yes, so training our way through the 1900s to modern times. Parliament started taking it seriously. We had our first Minister for Disability, Alf Morris MP, which those of you who were alive in '72, I wasn't quite, will remember. Someone wrote to the Guardian, I think it was, saying, shouldn't disabled people have equal rights, not special rights? And he was hounded for it. That's in 1972. That's really, really close. And it hasn't actually happened yet. And I'll tell you, disabled. I was born, yay, it was fabulous, in Scarborough Hospital, happily. And people started to kind of globally, and a lot of it in America actually, just this civil rights movement for black people. The disabled people kind of went, why are we not doing that? Partly it's much harder to get a rally together if you've got sticks, wheelchairs, crutches and guide dogs. And disabled people are so disparate, we can't organise ourselves out of a paper bag, to be honest. So if you're deaf, you're deaf. If you're blind, you're blind. If you're black, you're black. But if you're disabled, it's like, well, I would come out, but the Valium isn't working, and the pain relief isn't working, and the dog's been sick, and just so many other things to make us such a disparate group that to organise ourselves in a civil rights way was really hard. I say ourselves, I wasn't born, but I'm taking the credit on behalf of my people. The first social worker to be in a permanent wheelchair was a guy called, I can't read my handwriting, David Halpin in '74, the year I was born. Very good year, that. And you kind of think, surely it's kind of, but no, it was literally as recent as that. Someone who made themselves, oh no, it's not on the next screen. The International Day of Disabled People was 1981, so we had an international year. Yay! Don't know how much it did, but you know, but like the Paralympics, when people go, oh, the Paralympics are a really good thing. Yeah, when are you going to do the hurdles then? Ha 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 ha. Thanks for that. So we're all suddenly Paralympians in waiting, which is great. So there is a danger of having a big banner event, and all the Crips are going, yeah, but I can't live up to that. That's not real life. That's special in some ways. They've trained to do that. They found their can't. That's really not me. But suddenly we're all Paralympians in waiting, and the jokes are hilarious. Not really. So the law has been trying to catch up with disabled people's voices saying, we're here and we're equal, but you just don't see it. We're not special because everyone's special, and we are definitely important. Someone who made themselves really popular was Sir Nicholas Scott, disabled minister, who actually defeated a civil rights bill in Parliament because he said that it was just unworkable and it wouldn't really do anyone any favours. And all the disabled people in the country who voted for him went, well, thank you very much. You're meant to be our advocate and speak up for us, and you've just taken apart a bill that possibly would have worked really well, would have given us a bigger step on that equalities stage. But in 1995, the DDA, the Disability Discrimination Act, came in. It was a really good piece of work. And everyone quotes it and goes, oh, the DDA 95, which actually isn't law anymore. The Equalities Act 2010 is, but you will not find disability in there apart from a few pages. It's all now gone about equalities across the whole spectrum. So disability, once more, found its voice and then had it subsumed by everybody else. Rather like, well, we're all a bit disabled, aren't we? Are you talking down my disability or playing up your inconvenience with your painful leg? You know, which is this? So the voice of disability in politics became completely subsumed by a bigger picture as everyone jumped on board and went, oh yeah, that applies to us too. Yeah, thanks, but just, and people began speaking for us rather than letting us speak for ourselves. So we're kind of getting there. The social model and the medical model now comes into play. This is where small d, medical model, I have cerebral palsy and I live with it and it's not a problem. But the medical model says, but you have to work hard on your physio and you have to take these drugs and you were going to try and make you as normal as you can be and find your point of no return. And then we'll be happy. But it's down to the patient to work really hard on this and to go and, you know, try and make themselves normal. That's that word normal, I'm using it deliberately. The social model says, stuff that, I've got cerebral palsy, that's fine, I can manage myself in that. But what disables me is you lot out there. When I roll up with a good attitude in my wheelchair, really good attitude, stairs. It's okay, the physio says if I think really, really hard, I can get up those stairs. And the social model says, not a chance. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Rubbish! A bad attitude with a pair of stairs and a pair of wheels, that's not going to work. That's disabling. And attitudes that allow fabric to continue is disabling. So we always, as Disability in Jesus, we start with attitudes and theology first, which then begs the question, in which case, what can we do? Thank you very much. The great heroes of church history, oh my goodness. We'll just do a few of these because half of them annoy me too much. Gregory of Nicaea, who described disability as wretched remnants of once human beings. Yeah, everyone says, oh, Gregory, great church father. He's lovely, isn't he? Not so much. You're going to find us say that about a lot of people. and I will send you these. But he had a kind of a charitable benevolence. If we look after these poor people, then we will feel better about our walk with God. I have to say, in some of the larger, overly charismatic evangelical churches, I still see Gregory's attitude, which is we must be lovely to minister to these people because it makes us a better disciple. All right, well, thank you very much. Glad to be of help. Augustine saw a hierarchy of ability and disability. So if something was wrong with your faith, then you slid down the slippery slope into disability and illness. But if you were a good person, then you kind of climbed back up again. He was very confused about illness and disability. But his kind of attitude has led into the, we're all disabled in some way, aren't we? And to which I would answer, no. We all have broken bodies and illnesses that come and go, and things we recover from and don't recover from. But actually disability is something imposed on rather than from inside. Sometimes it's disability is in our heads with the lies we've been told and we believe about what kind of person I am with my CP if I'm not normal enough. And that can disable me hugely. Other attitudes I've taken on and owned as my own story. Aquinas. Actually, he was quite a good guy, but still a bit confused. He said that whether we're disabled or able-bodied, we are still made in the image of God. He kind of ventured into the flawed creation theology, which was disability is in the image of God, but not quite so much of an image as able-bodied people. So we're in the image of God, but some of us are not quite so image of God as others. You know, all people are equal, but some more equal than others. Julian of Norwich, she was a bit of a one, wasn't she? Do you know, I think I probably would now diagnosed with some kind of mental health, schizophrenia, bipolar kind of thing. Fabulous, and she brought a huge wealth to the church, but she prayed, God, make me ill so I can share in the illness of others. And God went, okay. And so she was really, really seriously ill and died at about 24. Really seriously ill. She was sort of bedridden for years because she wanted to enter into Christ's sufferings, and people like me are sufferings, although I don't say I'm suffering, but she thinks I do, so that's fine. So they're kind of like this false kind of, I want to get alongside and walk in your shoes. Good for you. Just live alongside me for a bit, love. It's just going to be much easier. You're called to be you. But from that, she had these amazing visions and experiences that maybe she wouldn't have had if she'd not immersed herself in the difficulty of frailty of human life. Luther, yay! Luther. Go on then, I'll give you some time. He met a 12-year-old boy who he said could only eat or excrete, and advised the parents to smother the kid because it will be kinder all round. That kind of non-humanity shouldn't really exist. So to smother and to kill would be a better thing to do. And modern day eugenics goes, thank you very much. We've now got a cut-off point of human, not human enough. And the Nazis went, oh, we like that. We can, we can work with that. Yeah, sure you can. We've got Calvin at the top. Calvin and Hobbes, I'm just kidding. We've got Hegel. Hegel's a bit weird, so I only put him in just to impress people who are theologians, but Hegel's just very odd. And Kierkegaard. They all struggle with the value of disability. It doesn't have a value in itself, but people who are disabled give us value, the able-bodied people, because there's a kind of a ministry going on that makes us feel good about who we are in Jesus. Bonhoeffer was the one who looked at Luther and the Nazis and went, oh, no. No, we are all human. We may be broken, but we are all human. And we know that Bonhoeffer was not popular. His observations about eliminating the weakest and the questions today of what happens in the womb and what we do about that are closely tied together. Friends whose pregnancy has revealed Down syndrome have had a big question asked of them, what do you want to do? And you kind of want to go, what would Luther say? Whether they come in broken or able, whether they come in whole or in bits. And to not belong because the community puts up barriers is wrong. And if you're missed when you're not there, then you belong, no matter what age or stage you're at. John Swinton, a pretty good theologian on this. So Jesus, what would Jesus do? Never mind what would Luther say. Jesus had a phenomenal way of being accessible. And if you could take things back to your church, this is a really good starting point. Knowing your own story. So we've done the bit about the soil, knowing about church history, about politics, and you can go back to your own churches and think, what is our story that we have told so far about what we think about disability? So go and do your own. Who are our Luthers? Who are our Gregory of Nicaeas? Who are our Martin Hegels, who are completely understandable? Where's our politics been over the years about disability? So tell your own story back in your own churches. Go and dig up the ground and see what's there. But then move on to the next bit about, in which case, what Jesus did was he was accessible and went to where the people were. This is your what you can do now, or checklist for your own ministry to people with disabilities. We'll come on to the independents in a minute. So if you're ministering and welcoming disabled people into your church, which is very magnanimous of us, the able-disabled model again, but we'll go with it for the minute. Jesus went to where they were, to the marketplaces, to the homes, to the streets, to the harbours. He went out and very rarely stayed in. It wasn't a come to me mentality. It was I'll go out and I'll be where they are. And he met people. 25 of the 34 miracles involve Jesus meeting people with disabilities. That's quite a high proportion. So if your ministry out isn't 25 out of 34 encounters are disabled people, then and I include myself in that as a vicar, he gave them time and space, he gave them dignity, he didn't rush them. He went to where they were and said, right, what are we about? Who are you? What is this moment going to encounter? The man born deaf and mute, middle of a crowd, they're all pushing him forward, yay, it's a miracle, yay. He says, come with me. And they just go off to one side and they sit down quietly away from the crowd. It's just a quiet moment. He's accessible and he goes to where people are. And then he did the healing. The second thing you can ask your ministry teams and your ministry model is about listening but not assuming. So Jesus, when he meets people, says, what can I do for you? And your answer is, you're the Son of God, surely you know. But he says, what is it I can do for you? Blind Bartimaeus says, have mercy on me. Okay? The man lying on the mat says, I don't know, I'm brought here against my will, and I've got no say in this. I'd just like to go home and have some dignity. So there is always that question, what is it? What do you want from God? And I get pounced on at things like New Wine, where people go, oh, crutches, I'm a pastoral worker, I can pray for you, yay! No, I need the loo, to be honest. What can I do for you? Get out of the way. I'm desperate for the toilet, thank you very much. Not coming back to the green badge, you get just over there. So not assuming anything, which is really, really hard to do. Again, this is the able ministering to the disabled, but that has problems anyway, but that's fine. Or the centurion who sent word, and Jesus says, what is it you want from me? I want you to heal my servant. And the crowd are going, he's Roman, don't do it. He's going to be against you, it's a trap, don't go into. And Jesus says, of course I will. That's what he's asked for, that's what he'll get. And the third thing Jesus does, and we should be doing too, is thinking about people's relationship with God first. Where is their faith? Not as a, how much faith have you got? That's not enough to get healed today, come back tomorrow. But as in, never mind the physical thing you need. Where are you at with God? The man lowered through the roof, needed legs that worked. And Jesus said, your sins are forgiven. You can imagine the guy going, thank you. And Jesus only heals him because the crowd are going, really? You can't do that. Really? I can't? Do you want some proof? I can. Okay, up you get and walk. Jesus would have left it at sins forgiven and not let him get off the mat if people hadn't questioned his authority. As far as Jesus is concerned, it's your relationship with God that I care most about. Your sins are forgiven. Wow. The woman brought to him caught in adultery. Where was the man, by the way? Anyway, just a question. Because you can't be adulterous on your own, I'm presuming. I haven't tried, so I don't know. But, you know, she's brought to him and he just says, you know, your sins are forgiven. Just off you go. That's all he cares about. I just care that you and God are right with each other. And the physical stuff can come later if we need it to. So he wants to know, how are they with God? And disability can often mar that relationship hugely. The Jesus model of ministry. He was accessible and went to where they were. He listened and didn't assume. And he thought about their faith and their relationship with God before ticking the boxes of restoration. Interesting thing for you to think about, healing and cure. The two are not the same, and there's a growing movement amongst disabled people to think about how they're different. The man through the roof was healed first when his sins were forgiven, and then he was cured of the thing that kept his legs from working. When people say to me, can I pray for you? I say, yes, I've got a terrible migraine, I'm really belligerent, and I've fallen out with my dad, and the house is really untidy. And they're like, no, I'm at the crutches. Yeah, I know you did. That's the cure you wanted to pray for. But I don't think I'm ready for that, and neither is God. So when we pray, healing and cure can be very different. Sometimes they're the same thing in the same package. I ask my disabled friends who do and don't do church, when people say, can I pray for you? What is it that happens next? And again, if you want this emailing out to you, then I will do so. Just tell me before you leave the space what your email address is and we'll do that. And they said things like, ask me what I want prayer for, don't assume. Don't think that I've got not enough faith for this. I've got loads of faith, but God and I are wrestling with stuff at the moment. My disability doesn't need, fixing in order for me to be a better Christian and you to feel better about your prayer ministry. I'm not an experiment. So all the things we've been talking about. When you've prayed for my healing, by which I mean cure and you mean healing, and I don't leap off my crutches and go, yeah, it's a miracle. Don't have a face drop that goes, oh, shit, it hasn't worked. Because other things are going on. Healing is bigger than just the cure that you're after. And your briefly thought out theology of healing doesn't actually weigh the same as my whole life experience of wrestling with this. I've been pondering why I'm not able-bodied since I was 7. I'm 43 now.
Would you say that then the healing that is required for you or anyone else is in the mind? It's the healing of what you think you are and how you approach what you are?
I think so. There's a huge healing of how I see myself based on what society has told me over the years. And my disabled activist friends who can be a bit militant the other way. Own it and claim it. Oh, it's inconvenient. Why would I do that? But my cerebral palsy has opened doors, rather hard with crutches to get through, but it's opened metaphorical doors which wouldn't have been opened had I not had cerebral palsy. And so the healing of attitudes and the healing of resentment about people's view of me is more important than whether my crutches are here or not.
But
yeah.
Does it include resentment of how you might feel about your disability?
I do occasionally look at my left leg and just say, join in. Yeah, no, but I can only talk about me, really. So it's a good question. Do I resent my disability sometimes and the fact my body doesn't work? Yeah, because it's really inconvenient. But I share that with people over 65-ish whose bodies are wearing out. We have the same language of, isn't it a nuisance when it takes half an hour to get up in the morning just to get out of bed? Because the body goes, I'm not awake yet. And how things take longer, and cups of tea take longer. And you think, it didn't take me this long a few years ago, it's taking longer now. So it's a shared experience of being human. So we're all ill and broken, but disability with a capital D is a whole extra challenge. The church... Yeah.
At the bottom of that listing,
this one here.
Yeah, the very bottom line.
Say, I'd like to pray for you, what can I pray? Oh, this one here, language.
No.
No.
That disabled person might want to pray for you.
Oh, yes. This comes on to our disabled leaders thing, because the disabled person might say to you, well, I'd like to pray for you. And you're going, why do you pray for me? This is the way it works. This is the power relationship. This is the patron-client thing. And so what do you do when you get a disabled leader? Or your ministry team person says, I'd like to head this up, and you're going, but you're blind, how's that going to work? How can you lead prayer ministry teams if you can't see the people you're praying for? And the person with autism who just says, well, I'd like to do this, and you're like, oh, you see the world so differently, I'm not sure I can quite go with this. When our leadership have disabilities, what do we do about that? This person summed it up interestingly enough. After many years struggling with the seeming injustice of being a Christian with cerebral palsy, wondering why I wasn't special enough or important enough to be healed, cured, I came to the uncomfortable place of knowing that my CP and disability is part of my identity, and my identity is held by God. I know this to be true. There are some days when I simply don't like it. To be a disabled vicar is apparently pioneering. Disabled bishop would be interesting, wouldn't it? If the next Bishop of Sheffield rocks up in a wheelchair in the cathedral, everyone's going, oh, wheelchair, we can't get you up and down the steps for all the fancy bits we do around the place. You know, how's that going to work? If your next pastor or vicar who applies for the job, interview and gets the interview, and you're going, but, how's that going to work for the theology and your buildings? Buildings are a whole different ballgame. That's a DAC thing. So there's this huge thing about knowing our past, understanding where we've come from and the language that's brought us to where we are today, and the theology that says this, but our buildings say that, or our pastor preaches this, but actually everyone in the pews is going, I don't agree with you. So where have we come from? What soil has our current church been grown in? Not just the church history of 1388 and beyond, but our own particular context. And then saying, understanding our past and where we are today, how do we therefore model a ministry like Jesus did to those people who need our ministry? And then saying, what if we are the ones being ministered to by disabilities? And my massive question for Bishop Pete's going to be, yes, there's no young people. And I was a former youth worker. I've got a passion for young people and children. Yes, there are no black and minority ethnic people, and that whole phrase, some of my really close friends are in that category. And I'm kind of going, why are you not in church? Well, it doesn't appear to want me. It's all white people. And then I look around and go, and where are my people? Where are the disabled people? Capital D, small d. Where are they? Because they're just not in church. 33% of the country has a diagnosed disability. 33%. They're not in church, and they're definitely not wearing dog collars, and they're definitely not wearing purple with pointy hats, unless they're hiding it really well. Unless being a bishop is a disability in the first place, which my bishop friend said, so I'm allowed to quote, but not tell you who. Say again?
The bishop has to have help to get into the chair.
Bishop has to be led into the chair. Here you go, Bishop, because you can't find the chair yourself. But, you know, looking at bishops' chairs in cathedrals around the country, they're all up steps. So our ecclesiology, our church buildings in themselves, by and large, say, able-bodied people do the special stuff. By special, I mean ecclesiologically special. And if you're disabled, then you just stay in the pew that you can't get in and out of easily. And if you're that bad, you can stay in the porch. Like the court of the Gentiles and the court of the Jews and the Holy of Holies. We're kind of that mentality still about disability. So go back to your churches, talk about your past and how you've got to where you are today and the theology that underpins the language of where you are. Put into place the Jesus model. What is it he did? What is it we do with our ministry too? And then ask the question, if our leadership had medically diagnosed disabilities, would that change the way we do church?